And welcome back here to Morning Talk on the Talk of Mid-Utah, KSVC 980 AM and 100.5 FM. Robert Lovell with you alongside Caden McBride. It's now time for our Valley Viewpoint interview. And for our Valley Viewpoint interview for today, we are joined by David Kim as he founded C2 Education, the nation's leading test prep, tutoring, and college counseling organization. And David, thank you for joining us this morning.
Yeah, good morning, Robert.
Glad to have you on, and it's perfect timing as, of course, the nomination of Betsy DeVos is upon us, and that's part of we have a text-in topic where our listeners can give us their opinions, and our topic today is regarding Betsy DeVos. And so let's start there this morning with the nomination of Betsy as the Education Secretary. Reaction, of course, has been mixed. You've got at least two Republican senators that said they will not to be voting for her to confirm her as the Education Secretary. What's your thoughts from your organization?
Yeah, I mean, I think she's a wonderful lady who has great intentions in wanting to make an impact. With the Department of Education. I think in some of these confirmations, there's been some glaring holes that have caused some alarms. I think on both sides of the party. Even Senator Isaacson, who is supporting her, has said, hey, she's going to need some hand-holding from himself and his wife, who's obviously been a very long time special ed teacher. And so I think in terms of competency, there's definitely some concerns. But I think in terms of intent and kind of philosophy, there's a lot of support. Obviously, one of the biggest things that she is a supporter of is school choice and school vouchers, which have some mixed feelings with both parents and educators right now.
And so with that, of course, so where do you feel like if she does ultimately get confirmed in as the Education Secretary, what do you think the future of public schools and charter schools will end up being?
Well, I think there's going to be a big boon for kind of the private charter school sector. Her big push is to make schools more competitive, give parents kind of the option of choosing kind of their local public school as well as an alternative. I think some of the issues are kind of in the details of how that'll be rolled out and how that'll be implemented. One of the big concerns that you do hear, especially from parents who have special needs, is that some of the private schools or alternative schools that are out there don't necessarily have the resources and the facilities to help a student with either a disability or who has a special need. And so, that is a bit of a concern because there are limited dollars out there, and spreading those dollars out more thinly, can make potentially schools weaker at the end of the day as opposed to stronger. The idea of choice, I think, sounds great on paper, but you really need to look at the details very carefully before implementing those things.
Yeah, the question is just thinning that money out, those dollars where it goes. Now, one of our listeners texted in with this saying if she gets nominated, if she gets confirmed, saying adios Common Core. Would that be the case with Common Core if Betsy DeVos gets confirmed as the Education Secretary?
So the reality is that the Department of Education has very little sway in being able to affect the rollback of Common Core. That will have to be done a state-by-state initiative, but she does have a great bully pulpit through which to, really critique and provide suggestions on how we improve this idea. Again, the Common Core was something that she originally was a supporter of, and as well as many people on both sides of the aisle, because in theory, again, this is all in theory, the idea that we have standards is something that I think we can all agree upon. The way it was rolled out, again, and implemented and written is where a lot of people have, criticisms and complaints about, including myself.
Once again, David Kim with us, the founder of C2 Education. We're talking about education and specifically right now focusing on Betsy DeVos and her nomination as the Education Secretary. Let's go to the possibility of the abolishment of the federal agency that is the Department of Education. One of our listeners commented on that as well with that possibility. Do you think that it truly is an actual possibility that is out there?
Well, I mean, the biggest thing that the Department of Education really has their hands in is the lending, the federal-backed lending for college degrees for the students out there. The unfortunate reality is that the average amount of debt a student is coming out of a college with as they're graduating is almost $50,000 per student. And so how do we create an environment where people entering the workforce aren't overburdened by this crippling debt into the foreseeable future is something that the new Secretary of Education really needs to think about and keep keep fixing as we move on into the future. So whether the Department of Education continues to handle that money or that's given to another kind of part of the the government remains to be unseen. So at the end of the day, I mean, the Department of Education does not, they're not involved in a lot of areas outside of kind of the college lending and then some of the money that's available for underprivileged schools as well as kind of students with disabilities are kind of the three main buckets that she can really control.
Very good. Once again, David Kim with us this morning. You mentioned that you founded C2 Education, the nation's leading test prep, tutoring, and college counseling organization. And right now, of course, I know that I heard the unemployment numbers this morning saying that I think the 4% is where we are nationally. But those that don't have high school diplomas or college degrees, that it goes exponentially higher. So right now, the importance of getting a college education, obviously very key for our youth.
No, absolutely. Obviously, as more of the manual skill jobs are going away, and as we're moving into kind of more of the technology era, being able to compete in that work environment is obviously going to require not only a college degree, but even beyond that. And so, as we think about kind of the evolution of higher education and where it needs to be to really prepare our workforce, again, is a debate and a discussion that I hope Ms. DeVos or whoever the Secretary of Education becomes, really promulgates, because, that's the big issue at the end of the day is, how are we going to get more people working and more people ready for the workforce with the appropriate skills? And so, whether we're rethinking the way, VOTech, schools are designed so that it's, more geared toward coding and service type jobs, remains to be seen, and it's something that really needs to be done, in my opinion, to really get more people working and more people successful at the end of the day.
And then, of course, this was a big topic during President Obama's administration and somewhat during the campaign trail as well, which was free college. And, of course, free colleges, especially the community college level, is where they primarily focus that attention. So what's the future right now of for-profit colleges?
Well, I think, the for-profit colleges are optimistic that there'll be a little bit of reprieve in terms of the attacks that they received with the previous administration. I think there's a lot of great things that some of the for-profit schools did do in terms of innovating, really thinking about how do we provide programs that are really going to help students down the line. But like any kind of for-profit organization, they kind of looked at what the rules were and they maximized their ability to make money within the rules that the government set forth. I think there was an overreaction saying, "Oh, these guys were bad." No, they weren't necessarily bad players. It's the framework with which the government designed, and they were going to maximize the amount of money they could make within that framework. I think there's a lot of good that for-profit colleges can do, and obviously with kind of the right oversight and the right kind of regulatory environment, they can definitely thrive hand in hand with the community colleges and even push the community colleges to do better at the end of the day. And so you kind of see some of the dangers of kind of over opening the markets to education on the higher education side, and hopefully we don't make the same mistakes as we're trying to increase the number of vouchers and charters with the K-12 side. So those are definitely good lessons to be learned. But, I'm actually a big fan of the for-profit industry as long as we have the right rules set up for them.
Once again, David Kim with us this morning, the founder of C2 Education. David, anything else you think our listeners should be aware of, maybe regarding the future of education under President Trump and Betsy DeVos as likely the education secretary?
Yeah, I think the big things are, we want to make sure that, schools in rural areas as well as kind of the urban cities are properly addressed. Public education is not a homogeneous product. It's not a one-size-fits-all, and we have to really think about kind of what, the specific needs of each community might be. And so, making sure that we have, that discourse and discussion around that fact, I think is pretty important. I think the only other, issue. Obviously, there's this whole kind of brouhaha about immigration, and foreign students coming into the United States. They contribute almost $20 billion to the U.S. economy in terms of how much they spend and the dollars they bring forward. And so I think we also need to be pretty careful in terms of how we handle that particular topic, which has become a pretty big point of discussion the last couple of days.
All right. Well, David, thank you again for joining us. A lot of great information, and we'll look forward to ultimately see what happens with Betsy DeVos as the Education Secretary.
Appreciate it. Have a good day, guys.
Thank you very much.